Before I get started, just a quick funny story. Um, when I first started in service, I was a GSR and for District 24, and our DCM at the time had asked me to do a presentation at a pre-conference. I had no freaking clue. As a GSR, I didn't even know what DCM stood for. And my husband, who was not yet in the program with, decided to go with me because I'm doing this presentation. And my sponsor was there, and Osprey was our delegate at the time, and we ended up sitting at the same table as her. And people thought that my husband was her husband. I was like, no. There's some days she's welcome to him, but but I always thought that was funny. Osprey was an amazing delegate, and I still remember her report back that it brought tears to my eyes and really got me hooked on service. And at that, sorry, my name is Tari, and I'm an alcoholic. And I am sponsored, and I have a sponsor, and my sobriety date is 2/15/06. So I've just recently celebrated 19 years. And thank you. I'm just gonna do what it was like, and what I did, and what I'm doing now, and what I'm doing now I don't suggest, but but I am grateful for this program, the foundation that was given to me in sponsorship. I was born into a little beautiful blonde-haired, blue-eyed, 5 foot nothing, 17-year-old, and so there's issues with that. Most 17-year-olds don't know what to do with a baby. My grandparents ended up raising me until I was about three and a half, almost 4, and is when my mother met my first stepfather. And my grandparents lost custody of me because the women in my family are crazy and we like to try and kill our husbands. So, there's a little nervous breakdown going on, a little, little something there. So my mother got me back with this wonderful drug addicted, alcoholic, abusive man. But I got 2 little brothers out of that deal. My mother and I also got beat on a regular basis. So, my childhood is, not the stuff of fairy tales. There was all kinds of different abuse. Whatever. I've survived it. There's been therapy. It's whatever. It's great. I can share. And my mother was an alcoholic, an active alcoholic until I was 15 when she got sober. So the majority of my childhood is, being the peacekeeper. I'm the oldest. I took care of my brothers. I made sure they were fed. As we got older, I also made sure they were clothed, which was a lot of amends to department stores. Because we were poor, and so I did a lot of shoplifting as a child, and but it was for Christmas presents. It was for it was all things we needed. So that's how I justified it as a child. In my usage, so the alcoholism, the abuse, the chaos, this is normal for me. This is what I know. It's it is, and as a result of my upbringing, I started very young. I was sitting in a circle with my mother and her friends, and they were passing a joint. And I apologize. I know this is Alcoholics Anonymous, but drugs are a part of my story. They were passing a joint. They passed it to me. 5 minutes later, I'm thirsty. Somebody hands me a glass. It was vodka. So right there, all within 5 minutes, my first drug, my first drink. I was 5. So that same week, I also tried cigarettes behind the shed. So I was off to a stellar start. Fast forward, another stepdad. This is I categorized my childhood by where I went to school, and we moved a lot. So this was 3rd and 4th grade. This stepdad, they had a grow system downstairs. So I was teaching the neighborhood kids how to smoke, and then I would sell it to them. I was very entrepreneurial. No longer. I want a paycheck. I just want to work. But this is just what I did. I took care of my brothers because my mother would also disappear for days. Um, Up until sixth grade, my brothers were just getting too much for her to handle. They were getting too much for anybody to handle. I was their parent. Come on. So she sent them back to live with their dad. And by now we're on to another stepdad. And he is also an alcoholic. They are all alcoholics, by the way, all stepdads. So um, she sent my brothers off to live with their father. And for some reason, for me, this just took away me. What was I supposed to do anymore? I no longer had to make sure that they were fed, that we had clothes, that we had anything. I was the one that I broke up the fights, and if I couldn't, then I called the police. So my whole little world shifted at about 12 years old. At which point, I started nipping in the parents' pockets. So it went from just smoking to the smoking happened was starting. That was when it picked up daily. To where that stepdad was a truck driver, so he had things that made him go to sleep and things that made him stay awake. And alcoholics are woefully unaware of what is in their pockets, so they never notice when anything went missing. So at 12, I, was pretty much off and running. It just so happened too that hit junior high, we moved again, new people, new friends, and you always find those people that the likeness there. I always found the stoners. I don't know how. It was you're just drawn to each other. So no matter what school I went to, those were the people I found. Um, and that was fine. My life was what it was. There was a few schools and a few times in my early teens that I had like normal friends, and their house astounded me. I mean, there was like order. They had meals that the parents cooked. I'm like, wow, and I'd stay the night there, and I was like, this is weird. But had goals. I was goals. I want to be normal. Now, through the series of stepdads, by the time I was in middle school, I was never going to be married. I was going to have kids. I always knew I was going to be a mom, but I was never going to be married. Men are, no offense, but y'all are a pain. The universe had different plans for me, but this is it. So I'm plugging along, and I think the last actual grade I completed was the 8th grade. I attended high school, but it was in the smoking section. Um, Now my mom is continuing on with her thing, and she's got her deal, and bless her, she's an alcoholic, so I know she just didn't know what to do with us. The one last time I had to call the police. And actually, she turned violent towards me, which never had happened before. And so something clicked in her, and she was done. She went away to treatment. I was 15. That was December. Again, I took care of Christmas that year. Oh no, I made amends to Sears before they closed. Because that's where our Christmas shop that year. But she came home. And so there I am, 15. I'm almost 16. I have been doing whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. And there comes waltzing into our house, after New Year's, she got out of treatment. She wanted to know where I was going. And I'm, what? And as a good teenager, I just lied to her. I had never had to lie to my mother up to that point because, one, she wouldn't remember. So that started a really weird cycle with my mother and I. I would lie and go do whatever I wanted. I would not come home. Back then, the police would bring you home too if you were too drunk. Even if you were driving and like changing a flat tire or something, they would help you. And that was weird. I was like, thank you. But it was a different time back then. I'd be getting out of hand. They would bring me home. My mom is newly sober. I didn't understand what her issue was. There was at one point in time, the police bring me home. and I have a Mickey's Big Mouth and a cigarette. She didn't know I smoked. And the woman is newly sober, and you've got a 15-year-old there with a Mickey's Big Mouth just smoking a cigarette, saying, "What the fuck are you doing? Why are you doing it this way? This is not how we run the house." And I wondered why she relocated me. you know? So a couple months into her sobriety, she did relocate me. I see now that I was a handful. I thought I was a good teenager. Um, but I got to go live with my aunt, which I've lived with my aunt off and on throughout my childhood too. For some reason, and I've talked to her recently. It's like, why did I live with you then? Why was I going to, she just couldn't stand what was going on at the house, and she would take me, and I would live with her for a few months, and then welfare would find out, and I would have to go back to my mom. But so my aunt was getting back together with her abusive alcoholic ex-husband because, like I said, the women in my family, we were just not right. In Wyoming. So she's moving from here to Wyoming. She's taking me with her. So there I am. I'm 16. I'm from the big city of Linwood. But the little town of Sheridan, Wyoming, it was a big city. I had a leather jacket and I had very large hair because, it was the 80s. Oh my God, the looks I got. I was like, I did not fit in there either. I don't fit in anywhere, but they're definitely not. But again, those stoners, they're there. They're everywhere. Found them. And fun fact, Wyoming had drive-through bars, drive-through liquor stores, and the drinking age was 19. So here's big city Linwood girl. I got served in my car. My uncle pulls up to this bar when we arrive in Sheridan, Wyoming, and says, "Do you want anything to drink?" And he goes, "We're getting a beer." I'm like, "What?" And yeah, I had a screwdriver my first day driving around Sheridan, Wyoming. So I was very happy there. It was it was a great time, and I actually loved Wyoming. But again, that whole rule thing and me telling the adults where I'm going to be. My uncle had some issues with me and curfews, and I was literally kicked out of there within 5 months. So I was homeless in Wyoming for a bit. But I was going to school, and so my friends felt sorry for me, and I couch surfed for quite a while. And then I had a job at Burger King, and my boyfriend and I got our first apartment. But that didn't work out. I'm a freaking alcoholic. He was not. And so I ended up coming back home to a mom that had a little bit more sobriety. She said, "Let's try you living here again." Well, I'm doing the same stuff. I tried to go back to school. I met my first husband, and then that went off on a whole different, he wanted to be in a band, and he was learning how to play guitar, and apparently I wanted to be a groupie, so it just worked out. But as young love does, it doesn't often work out, but we got a beautiful boy out of that. And he went off on his narcotics route, and I went off on my alcohol route. And this boy, my baby, he's initially why I quit drugs, because the drugs continued and they escalated, and there were more and there were lots, but alcohol was the constant in my life. It was a constant in my life. It was what I did when I was happy. It's what I did when I was sad. It's what I did when I was bored. But having a toddler and staying up all night long is not really, they don't mesh well, and you come to and he's standing on you, coloring on, the wall. It's like, oh, all right. So, and I kind of continued dating the whole musicians, and I was like, they're all unemployed and they all like blonde strippers. So I was a brunette. This is natural, but I was a brunette. So me being a blonde stripper was just not in the cards. It was just not going to happen for me. So I'm settling down. I'm settling down. I'm doing okay. I'm getting off all the party favors. I'm still drinking profusely, but I'm actually very much a functioning alcoholic at this point. Um, I'm a single mom. I have a full-time office job. I have 2 nighttime jobs. One of the jobs I can bring my son to. My ex at the time was taking him half the week. Things were working out. I live in a house in North Seattle with my 2 brothers. My brother is dating this young lady, who I think is a little coke whore and just after my brother for the drugs because he's a drug dealer. And her and I, we butted heads a little bit and stuff, but she was a sweet gal for the most part. And, she really wanted me to meet her brother. They thought both her and my brother thought this would just be great. He's recently divorced. He's a dad. He's got 2 kids. He goes, "You guys would be great together." It's like, 1, he's not a musician, so really, what am I going to do with him? But 2, musicians are not working out right now. They're just, And I was like, he's in the military. I was like, oh, he's got some self-discipline. He's going to be responsible. The lies we tell ourselves. So my brother has a keg for his then girlfriend, my now sister-in-law, for her 18th birthday, I think. And her brother comes. He brings the keg. So I'm like, he thought it was his car. I'm not a car girl. Pulls up in a Camaro. It was the keg in the back. But I was in between jobs. I had my full-time office job. I nap. I get ready. I go to the bar job. And that's, when he was there and the keg and there was Jaeger in the freezer, which was my drink of choice in the day. And they talked me into just doing a shot. And then they talked me into calling into work sick. And which I don't usually do because I'm actually a very good employee. But I did it. And as the night went on, he and I went and got another keg. And there were people that were trying to kick my ceiling in. And he stepped in and he stopped them. I was like, oh, look at that. Because I was always the bouncer and whatnot for the parties that my brothers threw. So so this was like somebody who's there, who's helping me, and we actually sat, we had a conversation that night. And I was a little smitten, I was just like, well. And then he went off to Hawaii or something because he was still in the military. He was in the reserves, and he got very, very tan. And he came back a month later, 3 weeks later, and he sat in not my section in the bar I worked at. I just continued to walk past him. I didn't recognize him. He was that tan. He looked like a different freaking person. But his buddies stood up, and so that's the start of our lovely history. And we did a few things with my brother and his sister, and our first date, our first official date. He picked me up in that Camaro with a 12-pack, and we went to a McDonald's drive-thru. Yeah, I'm a cheap date. But his and my story is absolutely, it turns out while, my ex-husband was a drug addict, he's an alcoholic. And so you have 2 alcoholics, and what we did the same things our parents did. We fought, we brawled, the police came, the ambulances came, I'd start kicking him out and throwing his stuff out in the front yard. All right. And he'd start grabbing my crap and throwing it in the front yard, We are those neighbors. It's just, it's been fun, but, sort of. But what we are is a tribute to what this program can do. We married alcoholically. I got sober 4 years before he quit drinking. And then 3 years after that, he came to the program. At which point he had asked me for a divorce, and I had said yes. Living with a dry drunk is not fun. There was no longer the excuse, well, he's hungover, well, he's drunk. Yeah. Anyway, that's another story. That's a couples thing. So what got me here finally? My drinking. It actually towards the end I started doing drugs again. That was the number one thing. I'd kind of lost it. My one goal in life was not to be my mother. Um, and in a sense, I was not. My children made it to school. My children always had clean clothes. They were always fed. They did this. I checked all those boxes drunk. My children still got to witness the violence. They still got to work just the crazy. Him and I are arguing. The next morning, everything's fine. My children got to see me get sober. They were 5, 9, 16, 18, and 19, I think, when I got sober. So the older boys, there was a little wariness there still. My younger boys would not let me leave the house after I got back from treatment without one of them. I could not go to the grocery store. And I was told they didn't trust me, and I got to let them go with me. This last time in these rooms was not my first time. My mother brought me to a meeting at Wanda's, which I don't know if some of you may know of. Old meeting back on 99. When I was 17, she took me to my first meeting. I have been court ordered a few times into these rooms, and I learned how to work the system. I was not ready. I have quit drinking for my children. I have quit drinking for my husband. They were breaks. In my brain, it was a break. In my brain, I drank because he's an asshole. I drank because my mother didn't mother me. I drank, there was a million reasons why I drank. This last time, that last DUI, something in me broke. I got honest. I got honest with the officer. I said, don't bother giving me the test. I'm not going to pass. With the counselors, with the assessment, with everything. There's one set of directions after I got my assessment. They said, you do not stop drinking. I said, okay. I had to be medically detoxed. I have had withdrawal seizures in the middle of the Walmart in Aberdeen. So for me to not drink was, it was physically very, I could die. So I had to medically be detoxed. I had to go through detox twice before I got into treatment. I made it there. I listened this time. I had never listened to any other time in treatment. I had finally gotten off to that point, that jumping off point, where I can't live with it and I can't live without it. I was missing out on my children's life. My life, I didn't care about anymore. I didn't. There'd been suicide attempts. I sucked at that. And it is what it is. And so I came in here so broken, so desperate. And my first meeting out of treatment was a women's meeting, Sisters in Recovery, Saturday morning. My sponsor was in that meeting. I did not see her. I heard her. I heard hope in her voice. She had the alcoholic husband. He was in the program. She had kids that were being kids of alcoholic parents. I had kids that were doing those, they weren't doing great. So I went to that meeting a few more times. She gave me her number. I ended up calling her. She's my sponsor today. That meeting was my home group. That meeting was my home group for 15 years. I met beautiful women there. And today I have this wonderful support system and this foundation that this program and my sponsor has given me. And I think that's that foundation, because life has a way of lifing, and things get busy and do things. And Osri made a comment about my busyness, right? My work life has changed dramatically in the last 6 months. I went from just a regular office job where I got a lot of overtime and stuff, but it was normal. And, I had the same home group for 15 years. And I got into service. I had to change that home group because it was a Saturday morning and I was missing more than I could make it. And service is so, so important to this program. So I switched to a Tuesday night because Tuesdays, nothing ever happens on Tuesday nights and I can make that. But my job, which I thought was my forever job, I've been there 13 years. Um, there were some issues, and a boss kind of lost his mind and pulled a bunch of stuff. So my job kind of went part-time. On a whim, I Googled part-time jobs with mandatory drug testing. And then I thought, oh, and benefits, because I didn't have benefits. And that's literally what Costco popped up. I was like, oh, Costco is really my happy place. I love shopping at Costco. So I online applied. 2 days later, somebody calls me. I'm like, oh, there was no resume, nothing required. That's why I did it. It was really easy. If I had to find a resume or cover letter, it wouldn't have happened. And I went in and he's like, can you work from 2 to 7 a.m.? I'm like, you know what? I don't really sleep that well. I wake up every hour from 2 to 5. Like, yeah, I think I can do that. Okay, yeah, laying in bed and actually working here. Laying in bed going, oh. So, and 2 days later, I had an interview. 6 hours later, I got this call. I'm like, okay, this is meant to happen because nothing happens that fast. And so I am now working, I don't know, almost 60 years old at Costco from 2:15 a.m. to 10:45 a.m. stocking shelves. I'm getting freaking muscles. Yes. But I love it. And my other job is part-time, and so that's it. I still have office job during the day, but I'm working in the middle of the night. Normally I'm asleep, but for Austria, I took a nap. But this program, the foundation, my sponsor taking me through these steps and this toolbox. My meetings are so hit and miss because my schedule is so weird. I would not be okay. I mean, my husband and I have literally, he's made the comment. He's like, wow, you're doing really good. You're like not crazy at all. Because usually in early sobriety, if I went a couple weeks without a meeting, my kids would say, have you called Lorraine? I'd get this look. And now it's like, wow, you're not crazy. That's this program. But it is. And what I've come to realize too, I'm trying the Zooms, I'm trying this, I get disconnected, I do this. I need to be back in person. And this is a huge reminder of it. That when I got here, I there are familiar faces and there are new faces, but I feel at home. I feel at home here. And while I am okay and I am not crazy outside and the squirrely, this feels so much better. This does. It's just this really cool sense of calm. So that the importance of this program and being here, being involved, and service. I just have a couple minutes left, and I want to share just a real about the foundation and the importance of it in this program, and it's about a sponsee, and I have had permission from her to share. Now, not so much. I have a sponsee, and I've had her for 14 years, and we've been, there's been a few relapses. But for the most part, she's good. Her job takes her back and forth between Eastern Washington and Western Washington. Home groups were an issue for her, and we talked about this. We did a lot of book studies at my house. She did a book study with my husband and I. We've done the traditions. Had to work with her schedule, and she had like a hiking home group, and then a couple of years ago, she got fired from her job, and she couldn't figure out why. She was not able to pass the test to keep this job. People knew her. Some of my sisters knew her and stuff in meetings, and they're calling me because they're concerned. They're concerned she's using again. And I would have chat after chat. Something was not right. It turns out that she had frontal temporal dementia. So this is a rapid decline, and she started not. So fast forward. So I'm getting her to meetings. She's living with family. She's doing this. I'm getting her to meetings when she can. There's other women getting her to meetings. And this is about a year ago. I pick her up for a meeting. She no longer knows who I am. She kept having to ask my name. But do you know why we were still continuing to get her to meetings? Because what she remembered is that she had to get to her home group. That's what she remembered. She was losing everything else. And that's what this program, if you do it, you get in there, you get involved. And she got involved to the best of her ability. She was connected as best she could be. And she did the book studies and she did all that. And she could not remember me. And she was forgetting her family, but she remembered she had to get to her home group. So that, I think I'll end with thank you.